good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to you, the good people of the tube. Hope today, hope you're feeling grand, and always when the world hold everybody. Whatever A and Q Wednesday, everybody. Let's get into question one, shall we? Yes, I think we shall. Okay, so question one today is, if John Frusciante visited you for a jam, I wish, and he changed the settings on one of your amps, would you leave them the way he set them, or would you change them once he was gone? Well, I would play around with his settings. Like, I would play on them for a bit, but I would eventually change them, because I can guarantee... Well, this is something that happens quite a lot. I mean, amp settings are so subjective and so kind of different from one person to another person. You can't really use somebody else's amp settings to a T and get a sound that you want, if that makes any sense. You have to tweak things slightly. So, you know, the setting that would work for John wouldn't work for me. Which is why I always say in certain videos when I'm getting sound out of my amplifiers, you can use my settings, but use them as a jumping off point. You know, they're not gospel. You know, they won't necessarily work for you. So you've got to keep that in mind. You know, you've got to think that, like, you know, well, this setting, these settings won't necessarily work for me because I've got different guitar, different leads, different room, different amp, you know, all sorts of different things, different pedals. Even if it's the same pedals, you know, everything sounds kind of different. So you really ever want to use people's settings as like a jumping off point. They don't want to be kind of like, you know, well, that's the setting it's going to be. My settings work for me. They don't necessarily work for other people, and that's been proven in time. And in certain videos I've done, like for instance with the CR120 or the Katanas or whatever amp I'm using, you know, the MGs, you know, a lot of people have put those settings into their amps and they've said, well, it sounds nothing like yours. And it's like, well, it's not going to, because you're not me and you don't have my gear, you don't have my guitar, my leads, the room, you know, the amps I've got. You know, it's not going to sound the same. You know, you need to take those settings that I have and use them as a jumping off point to find your way. You know, and you need to just spend hours doing it, you know, just tweaking and finding what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what you like, what you don't like, you know what I mean? Like I say, I mean, my go-to setting quite a lot of the time if I'm going straight into an amplifier is everything on zero. Bass, middle, and treble-wise. It's just how I've always found my kind of sound, so to say. Well, my distortion sound more than anything. But so you have to kind of like think of it from that perspective. You can't just think like, you know, if I told you my settings are da-da-da-da-da-da, you can't go, oh, okay, and then you program your amp and all of a sudden that sounds there. It's not going to work that way. Plus, when you're hearing things kind of mic'd up and not in the room, there's a slight what's the word I'm looking for here? There's a slight difference, because what you're hearing with the mic is one speaker, whereas I'm hearing 2 or 3 or 4. You know what I mean? So, you know, you're only ever hearing that one speaker, and that speaker will sound different to this one and that one and that one. You know, I know in this cab, for instance, this is my Magic cab here, that I like this speaker the most. This is the speaker I mic up the most. I like that one. These two are fairly darkish. That one's probably the darkest speaker in this cabinet. I don't really like the sound of this one. It doesn't sound bad, but it sounds great, you know. But I don't like the sound of it compared to this one. And these two are really, really cool. But this one is my favourite speaker to mic up on this cab. But when you run them all together, it creates a real, you know, a great sound. But when I'm micing it up, you'll hear just this one. You know, you might get a little bit of spill from the others, but mainly you're just going to hear one speaker. So you've got to think of all, you know, there's a lot of variables when it comes down to kind of like dialing in tone and getting your sound, and also using other people's settings. You know, it's totally down to what you want to hear at the end of the day. Excuse me. You know, so if John came round and was playing through like the CR120, say, I don't think John would actually go for it. I wonder what John's opinion is on orange amps. You only see him really with Marshall or Fender or Vox. You know, you never really see him with anything other. You know, obviously in the early days you had like Carvin and Mesa Boogie, but they kind of went the way of Dodo fairly quickly. But yeah, I mean, if John did come around and kind of dialed in something on, like, say, the MG or the CR or the Boss or whatever, I would be very curious how he did it and what the settings would be at, and it'd be interesting to hear how different it sounds like with his settings with me playing it. You know what I mean? Because people say that all the time with like it's like people say like Eddie Van Halen, for instance, like no matter what Eddie plugged into, he just sounded like him all the time. Same thing with people like Rory Gallagher and people like that. They always sound just like them, no matter what. Angus Young, no matter what they plug into, they sound like them, And that's the thing is like, a lot of your sound comes from your ear of what you want to hear. So, you can eventually tweak the amp to kind of go, well, it's too much of this and not enough of that kind of thing, and you eventually kind of get it balanced out and it works, because I'd say, and everyone just has their own individual kind of sound. If that makes any sense, it might take a while to get to that, but I think everyone does. It just takes a bit of time and tweaking. But no, I mean, I would eventually change the settings on the amp. I mean, I can guarantee if John's settings on his amps wouldn't be to my liking. Again, you've got to think for yourself. You've got to think about what you want, not necessarily kind of like just because that's John Frusciante's settings and he's your hero, my hero. It doesn't mean that his settings are going to work for you. You have to find, if you want that sound, you have to find your way of getting that sound. If that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but you can't just kind of go, well, he's got the gain set here, he's got the presence set there, bass, middle, treble, whatever. You can't just go, oh, da 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 da, and there you go, because that's not the way it works. You really have to find your own way of getting it. And through the years of me messing around with it, I've found my way of getting my John Frusciante approximate tone. It's never going to be 100%, but that's fine, because through it not being 100% gives me my sound. But it's still, you can still hear it's inspired by John, which is really, really cool. And it comes back to that John Mayer line of, you sound like your heroes, you sound like yourself when you fail to sound like your heroes. Wicked line. Absolutely perfect line, and it's so true. John Mayer's a good example of that. He sounds a bit like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but not 100% like Stevie Ray Vaughan. You know what I mean? It's cool. I like it. But no, I mean, if John came around and tweaked the MG or whatever, then I'd be definitely interested to see how he set it up and how he set the dials and stuff, and see how it goes from there. But I wouldn't keep the settings. No, I'd probably take a picture of them or write them down somewhere just to know I've got them. But I wouldn't. I would change it, to back to what I wanted it to once I was to play through the amp again. If that makes any sense, I wouldn't kind of like stick to it like glue. If that makes any sense, because, like I say, it might not even be the sound I like. It might be a totally different sound to what I want it to be when I play through it. It might sound great when John plays through it, but as soon as I play through it, it might sound terrible. So, Anyway, there you go. So yeah. But anyway, that's a whole new video in itself, talking about settings and amps, and I do want to do a whole video on that at some point. I'll get to it at some point. Anyway, so yeah, I hope that's this question. Gonna move on to question 2 now. So question 2 today is, having watched your Paris video playing all those well-known high-end guitars, did you actually want to own any of them? And were they better than standard models? Did I want to own any of them? Yeah, quite a few. John's guitar is 335. Jimmy's Strat. Paul Kossoff, Eric Clapton's Les Paul Custom. I really liked the SG, the Billy Gibbons SG with the clockwork bit in the top. That was amazing. Out of all the guitars I tried of Billy Gibbons's that day, because I tried quite a lot of his guitars that day, that SG with the clockwork clock mechanism was the best one by far. It sounded immense. It even beat Robin Ford's SG. That SG was great, but that clockwork SG, wow, amazing guitar. But yeah, there was quite a lot of guitars I wanted to own that day. That Martin acoustic, the 0015 or whatever it is, I can never remember the numbers. I'm just gonna blame my dyslexia for that because I'm no good with numbers anyway. But the brown mahogany one that looks like John Frusciante's, I loved that acoustic. That was amazing. There was a couple of guitars that I didn't play that day, which I kind of wish I had, but I didn't have time sadly because to play them all. But But yeah, I mean, John's 335 was amazing. And it got me a little bit more than emotional, should we say, to say the least. That guitar did. It was really kind of it was a strong moment playing John Frusciante's guitar. It really was. I mean, the same thing, same kind of went for Jimi Hendrix's Strat as well. That was a strong moment. But I say John being my number one hero, playing his guitar that I've seen him play countless times, and I've seen it in his house, pictures of it in his house. It's like all of a sudden you're playing it, you have to take a minute. You know what I mean? Because all of a sudden things don't look the same. It's a bit weird. But yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have that guitar. I mean, Matt's got the Can't Stop video guitar now, and I'm going to have to go and play that if I can ever get to go there again. It's not because Matt won't let me go again. It's the fact of, obviously, with everything going on, hopefully, at some point this year, I'll get to go to Matt's again and play the Can't Stop Stratocaster. The Silver Sparkle one, which John didn't technically like, but it looked good in the video. I think he took his 62 down, but they said you're not allowed to use that. We want you to use this one because it looks better for the video, and he was a bit like, wasn't particularly happy about it because he used the Silver Stratocaster, and it was a Toronado. I don't know, weird orange Fender thing, which he ended up smashing actually because he didn't like it, so he smashed it. But the Silverway didn't smash, but Matt's got that, and I say he's invited me to go and play that as well when obviously we can travel again. So fingers crossed. At some point this year I'll go back again and play that guitar, and can't wait, can't stop. He's so funny sometimes. You see that face? God, I'm an ugly freak. Anyway, moving along. So there was a lot of guitars that I'd like to own of Matt's, to be honest with you. Spot was amazing as well. Although, Spot had a lot of kind of, obviously being a 59 Les Paul, it has a lot of responsibility on the guitar, does that. Yeah, it really does. But Spot was amazing. I mean, it really sealed the deal to me of what I want in a Les Paul. Because to me, I've always wanted a Les Paul. I've always wanted it to be really bright and kind of like twangy. Like, how many times have you heard the word Telecaster on steroids with a 59 Les Paul? And that's exactly what they sound like. That's what it felt like as well. It felt like just a bigger Telecaster. It had such a twang to it, a mid-rangey honk. It's like somebody took a Telecaster and just turned up the mid-range on it and just kind of cranked up the output a bit more. But it was an amazing guitar. But again, I feel my Revelation has that kind of same thing. You know what I mean? I know there's a big price difference there, and I'm sure a lot of people will give over, Dave. But honestly, my Revelation RTL 59, which, if I go back to, when I get to go back to Matt's again, if he's still got Spot, I'm going to take the RTL 59 because I want to do a comparison between a 59 and my RTL because I'd love to know. Because they almost felt the same. The RTL 59's neck feels like it felt like it was the right dimensions. Maybe it was a little bit bigger than Spot's. It was obviously lighter because it's not mahogany and maple cap. It's maple capped to the RTL, but it's not. The back isn't mahogany. It's a different wood. But the RTL's got that twang to it. So it's a really bright Les Paul tone. And that's what I've always wanted in a Les Paul. And playing Spot just sealed the deal for me, going, that's exactly what the sound I want. And it's in the RTL, so I'm happy with that. So when you say, were they better than standard models? That's, again, subjective. Because, to me, Jimi Hendrix's 63 Strat was one of the better Strats I've ever played. Wasn't the best Strat I've ever played. That Honor Force two others. But it was definitely kind of like maybe third or fourth on the vintage Strat scale, because it was just, it had a feel about it. Again, I had to kind of, for a minute, what I had to do is kind of look at the guitar subjectively. The same, I did the kind of same thing with John's guitar and Paul Kossoff's Les Paul. I had to try and pull back and not get overwhelmed by who these guitars belong to, and try and look at them subjectively and go, is this a good guitar? Even if it didn't have Paul Kossoff, Jimi Hendrix, John Frusciante, Eric Clapton's name attached to it. Is it a good guitar regardless? And yes was the answer. Jimmy's 63 Strat was an amazing amazing guitar. It felt the neck. Oh my god, the neck. Oh. The neck was amazing. You know, the pickups were just evil. Apparently, Matt said that Seymour Duncan had worked on it, and I'm not surprised because him and Jimmy and Seymour Duncan were good friends, and he would give him pickups to try and all this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, that 63 Strat of Jimmy's was amazing. John's 335 was stunning as well. You know, the one guitar that I was kind of like was amazing, but kind of like didn't overly wow me was Robin Ford's SG. It was great guitar, but I wasn't kind of like too taken by it. There was a couple as well. Noel Gallagher's, I can't remember the year of it, but his Martin acoustic with the pickups in it. That was a bit take it or leave it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, it's all right. It's okay. You know, it wasn't the most amazing acoustic in there. You know, the other. In all fairness, I would say that was probably the weakest acoustic I played that day was with Noel Gallagher's Martin. It just didn't really have much to it. Sounded really cool plugged in, but acoustically, it was meh. It sounded better plugged in actually than it did acoustically, I think. But you know, but yeah. So were they better than standard models? Again, totally subjective. To me, some of them. But again, what's standard? You know, it's a hard question to answer that because were they special? Yes. Were they special because of the names? Not necessarily. You know, I mean, Jimmy Strat wasn't special because it was Jimmy Strat. It was special because it was a great guitar. Same thing with Spot. You know, was Spot special because of Joe Bonamassa and it's a 59 Les Paul? No, Spot's special because it's a great guitar. You know, and it really is, you know, as Les. I mean, I've played so many vintage Les Pauls, you know, from the 50s and the, you know, I've never played the 60s actually, but I've played some kind of like, you know, later ones like 70s, 80s, you know, deluxes and stuff like that, and standards and all that kind of thing. Spot is definitely up there with one of the, you know, as one of the best Les Pauls I've ever played. Just amazing guitar, felt, sounded. Played so amazingly. It was so good. But without these names attached to them and you know their price tags and the year, are they good guitars? Yeah, mostly they were. Like I say, Noel Gallagher's acoustic, not so much. Robin Ford's SG, it was okay. You know, it was okay. You know, Michelangelo Batio's guitar, certainly not. It was terrible. I'm sorry to say that. If any Michelangelo Batio fans out there, that guitar was horrible. I do apologise on my phone. That guitar was horrid in every shape of the word. It really was gross, and it just didn't do anything. It was horrible guitar. They weren't all great. Anyway, Matt did actually have it. I can't remember what it was, but it was a Les Paul copy, bolt-on neck, natural Les Paul. He was playing it when we left. He just sold it actually, and I was annoyed that he just sold it because it was one of those Japanese copies, you know, from the 70s of a Les Paul, and it looked amazing. And he said he just sold it and if he hadn't said that, I would have probably bought it because it was just so cool. Anyway, but no, yeah, I mean, are they actually better than standard models? I mean, that's totally dependent. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, you couldn't get me to trade my white Strat for Jimi Hendrix's. That's not going to happen. But, you know, again, it's so subjective. Was it better than this guitar? In my opinion, no. You know, my white Strat was better than Jimmy's. You know, Jimmy's white Strat was amazing, don't get me wrong. But I prefer my white Strat. I'm going to, though. I love this guitar. You know, I am attached to this guitar in ways that I'm not attached to other guitars. And because of that, you know, I'm always going to prefer this guitar. But, somebody could pick up these two guitars, so my guitar and Jimmy's guitar, and go, oh, I don't like your guitar at all, Dave. I definitely prefer Jimi Hendrix's. Again, it's totally subjective. It's totally down to kind of like, you know, of what you feel, what you like, what you want to hear. You know, what you want it to look like, what it sound like. You know, like I say, I mean, I know a few people have played this guitar and not liked it. You know, it's not it's not for everyone, you know, and that's the way it should be. You know, not everyone's going to like everything you do, you know, and that's the way it should be. You know, it'd be a bit weird if everyone liked the same thing. It'd be a bit creepy. But no, I know a lot of people have played this guitar and gone, nah, not for me. You know, some people don't like how skinny the neck is because it is a quite skinny neck. You know, some people don't like the way it sounds. You know, some people don't like the way it feels. You know, it's just the way it is. You know, and the same goes. I've played loads of guitars of other people's that people say, oh, this is an amazing guitar, and I've gone, don't like it. You know, again, you just got to be honest. You know, you got to be true, and you got to be kind of like, you know, you've got to take a moment out to kind of, and especially if you play like a celebrity-owned guitar, like Jimi Hendrix's or John Frusciante or Paul Kossoff or Robin Ford or Billy Gibbons, you got to take a moment away from that and go, is this a good guitar without that name, price tag, year, whatever, legendary status? It's like, is it a good guitar, you know? And, you know, those guitars, most of the guitars I played that day at Matt's they were amazing. You know, Jimmy's 63 Strat was, like I say, one of the best Strats I've ever played. You know, it wasn't the best, but it was definitely one of the best. You know what I mean? It's definitely kind of like fourth or fifth, definitely. You know, I would say number one, obviously, is my white Strat. You know, to me, this is the pinnacle of Stratness. You know, I can't get better than this guitar. Number two, well, there's a joint two, actually. It's my 62 and my Red Oswald. Number three is the 64 I played in Old Hat, and number four is definitely Jimmy's Strat. Because it's just amazing. Those ones are so cool. But number two is definitely a joint tie between my Red Oswald and my 62. So not only do they feel creepily the same, which is well creepy, the necks, everything about that guitar, those guitars kind of feel the same. They feel like they have the same vibe. It's so bizarre. They're just amazing guitars, you know. But I'll say number one spot always falls to Mr. White here. It has to, because he's just my best mate. Anyway. But like I say, I mean, other better standard models. I mean, you know, would I recommend going out and buying a 60 Strat over a Squier Affinity or a Squier Bullet? I don't know. It depends on how you feel about it. It's not really about what I think. You know what I mean? There are times in life where certain things come along where you're just like, I've got to have this. You know, and it could either be cheap or it could be really expensive. Either way, you know, you'll know. Because you'll have a feel and attachment to it, and I've just got to have it. You know, the 62 was a good example for me. Working in Old Hat, I was kind of, I don't get the vintage guitar thing. I was playing all these vintage guitars for years, and I was like, I don't get it. What's so special about them? There's nothing special about this guitar. And it wasn't until that 64 Strat came in, I was like, okay, I get it. I understand. You know, and it's rare. You know, it's very rare. And then, like, obviously playing the 62, it was like, yeah, because I'd played John Entwistle's 62 and a couple of other vintage Strats, and I was just like, my God, this is something else. And it really does have something else. It's a bit creepy, that guitar. The 62 is a scary guitar. It really is. But, you know, it's totally up to you. It's down to you. What do you like, what you don't like. You know, you've got to think for yourself and kind of make your own decision, really, on stuff, instead of kind of like letting other people kind of take the reins on that, if that makes any sense. You know, you really need to know where you're going with it yourself and understand it. So I do apologise for my phone. But yeah, so like I say, I mean, just because I love this guitar, somebody else could pick up this guitar and go, oh, really don't like that guitar, you know. And again, that's totally cool, you know. And if anybody ever does play this guitar and they say, I'm really sorry, I don't like it, it's like, there's no need to be sorry because you don't like my guitar. You don't have to like it. It's not yours. You know, don't worry yourself about it. You know, it's fine. If you don't like it, don't like it. I don't care. I love it. It's not going to change my mind. Anyway, I'm waffling. So yeah. Anyway, So I have answered the question. I'm going to move on to question 3 now. Otherwise, I'm going to run out of time. So, because I could talk about that all day, and he will do if he's not careful. People with tube, so we have to be careful, don't we, Dave? Yes, we do, Dave. Okay. So question 3. Okay, so question 3 now is something I don't really have any experience with, and I don't really care about having experience with. I'm being perfectly honest with you, people with you. So question 3 is, what do you think about the Klon pedal? Are they worth the hype? Okay, so I've seen a lot of videos on the Klon and its mythical status and all this and the other, and honestly, I couldn't care less about that pedal. it's like a tube screamer for me. I don't really like tube screamers. I had a tube screamer in 808 for ages. In all fairness, if I was to prefer a tube screamer, the TS9 was probably the better one. But in all fairness, I prefer other pedals to the tube screamers. But when it comes down to the Klon, I've never tried one. I don't care about trying one. I'm not interested in it at all. Or its legendary status. It's just one of those things that just does not interest me in the slightest bit. I mean, people just rave about them. I know they do, and like best overdrive and this, that, and the other, and but or whatever it is, boost pedal. But honestly, I really couldn't care less for a Klon. I don't care about it. Is it worth the hype? I mean, I suppose to some people it definitely is. You can see it. Some people absolutely adore them. So to them, it's definitely worth the hype. I mean, they love it. Which is cool. If they like it that much, then it's worth the hype to them. But to me personally, I couldn't care less. It's one of those things where I'm just not bothered about it. I've never have been. I mean, I remember watching videos on it ages ago, and I've peek in on videos on it every now and again. And every time I just watch it, I'm just like, meh. I don't get any kind of like amazing wow factor from the Klon. You know what I mean? I'm sure there is to some people, but there just isn't for me. Again, this is it's just the way I feel and the way I hear it and perceive it and feel the sound of a Klon. I mean, I've never tried one personally, but like I said, I don't really care to either. I don't really care about kind of like trying one, playing through one. It doesn't interest me at all. I mean, if I was at like somebody's house and they had one, they said, "Oh, do you want to go?" I would say, I'll definitely have a go. But other than that, I wouldn't actively seek anything like that out. If that makes any sense, I mean, I just don't. It doesn't feel like I just don't care, And I think that's the point. I mean, I think you will find like there are certain things you'll come across where you just like I don't care about that. You can't care about everything. I don't think you should care about everything. You need to kind of like, there needs to be a kind of a line drawn somewhere sometimes, instead of just kind of liking everything. I think you kind of have to kind of like, well, I'm not really interested in that. Because there's a lot of things that I'm not kind of interested in. The Klon's definitely one of them, stuff like other kind of amps and styles of guitar and stuff like that I'm not really interested in. So, but again, it's totally subjective. Is it worth the hype? Yes, to some people it definitely is. But to me, no, it's not. I've never tried one, don't care to, couldn't give a monkeys, even if it is amazing. It's just one of those things where, I'm just not that bothered. If I went my whole life without playing on a Klon pedal, I wouldn't consider that a failure, or a loss. It's not really interesting to me. It just, I don't know. It's just, it's just the way I feel. People who cheer about it. It's like I say, it's not really a. I'm not saying the pedal's bad because I've never tried it, so I can't say that. I'm just simply saying I'm just not interested in giving it a go. I just don't really give a monkeys. If it is life changing or what, I don't actually kind of care that much. If it is amazing, cool, but like to me, I don't really, I'm not after it. But I'll what do I think of it? That's what I think. I don't really give a monkeys. I mean, people tube. If any of you if any of you have actually tried a real Klon pedal, let us know what you thought in the comment section below. Or if you've got Klon replicas or anything like that, let us know your opinions on the Klon pedal in the description, in the comment section. Sorry. And let us know what you think to it, because like I say, for me, I'm not that interested. Just not interested at all. I'm sure it's a very cool pedal, but I don't really care. There's quite a few pedals I'm just like, nah, I'm not interested. There's quite a few amps and guitars, like I say, I'm just not interested. But yeah, for some people it's definitely worth the hype. Some people it's definitely worth its legendary status and stuff like that. But you can't like everything else. You can't like everything that everyone else likes. You know what I mean? Sometimes you got to be honest and true to yourself. And if you try something and you go, I don't like it, you need to be honest and go, I don't like it. Like I say, like I was just saying about this guitar and my Mr. White here and stuff like that. You need to be honest and go, don't like it. it's not about upsetting somebody. You've just got to be honest, and I think being honest is key. Really, I don't think there's any point in trying to sugarcoat something if you don't like it. You know, you just be honest and go, I don't like that. You know, in all fairness, there's not a lot of gear out there today that's rubbish. If I'm being perfectly honest, a lot of it's really, really good. But there'll always be, you'll always come across something that you're just like, yeah, I'm not so keen on that to myself. But yeah, and the Klon pedal to me is just kind of one of those things where I'm just like, yeah, not bothered. Much in the same way, I'm like, people ask me sometimes about like, you know, do you prefer rosewood or maple fretboards or ebony? I was like, I don't actually care. What I do care is what the guitar in itself feels and plays like. You know, I don't really care what the neck is. If the guitar's good and I like the feel of it, and I don't really care what its ins and outs are or what capacitors are in it or this, that, and the other. As long as it's a good guitar, it's a good guitar. Same with an amp. If it's a good amp, it's a good amp. If it's, you know, a good cab, it's a good cab. Good pedal is a good pedal. But again, all subjective. Everything's subjective, people with tube. Just go by your inner feel and meter and want, desire, you know, that kind of thing. You know, you need to kind of like go by you, because you is more important than what that guy down the road thinks. You know what I mean? Because you need to follow your path, walk your path, not somebody else's. So just because somebody says the Klon is the best pedal in the world doesn't necessarily make it so, because it might not work for you. You know, it's just the way that works. You know, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. Anyway, let's move on. But yeah, so I'm not bashing it though. Honestly, I'm not bashing it. It's just for me, I just don't care. I'm not interested in that pedal. You know, it just doesn't appeal to me at all. Anyway, gonna move on to the final question for today. Question 4 now. Okay, so question 4 today is, what's your thoughts on leaving guitars hung on the wall? I've heard people say it's a bad idea, but then I've heard people say leaving guitars in cases is a bad idea. Personally, I've never had any really, like, I've never really noticed any difference hanging a guitar on a wall or having it in a rack or on a stand or in a case. You know, I've had guitars that have been in cases for quite a long time. I mean, I'm not going to say years, because that's not true, because I'll eventually get them out at some point. But I've had guitars that have hung on the walls for quite a long time, and I've never had any issues with them. Guitars in cases, never had any problems with them. Guitars in guitar racks, never had any problem with them. So I don't really know. I mean, personally for me, I hanging guitars on the walls, I mean, I don't, as long as it's, the only thing I would say is make sure it's an inside wall. You don't really want to hang a guitar on an outside wall, because it'd be cold. And you don't really want your guitar to go through that kind of crazy temperature changes, to be honest with you, because I just don't think it'd be very good for it, because you're going to get the wood expanding and it'll never stay in tune. It'll never behave, and it'll, you know, it could cause issues with the neck as well. I would always recommend, kind of, if you're going to put guitar hangers up, put them on an inside wall. Be aware of radiators as well. Don't hang guitars near radiators or above radiators, or put your guitar against a radiator. You know, stuff like that. Never do that kind of thing. You know, just warp the necks. And but yeah, I mean, in certain respects, hanging guitars on the wall can be bad, but invariably, I don't think you're going to run into many issues with it. People with a tube need to chime in there as well. Let us know your experiences with this. You know, hanging guitars on the wall, leaving guitars in cases. Has anybody had any bad experiences, or is it, you know, or what's your positive experience? Let us know in the comment section below if you've had anything bad or good happen. Let us know. For me, like I said, I mean, this guitar's never been away. I remember when I first went to college, when I left. When how old would I have been? 17, 18? When I first went to college, I got this guitar in 2004. I started college 2004. Yeah, September of 2004, I started college. And this guitar, and I used to go there on my moped. I had a moped at the time. Because I was 17, so I couldn't drive yet. So, and this guitar came with... I don't know what happened there, people with tube. For some reason, the camera just said it had no memory, but it definitely does. I'm starting to worry about this camera. I'm starting to feel it's kind of on its way out. I might have to get a new one. Anyway, where was I? So yeah, anyway, I would travel to college 3 days. I can't remember how many days it was now, but I used to travel to college 5 days a week with this guitar on my back in a soft case on the moped in the rain, snow, cold, everything. You know, this guitar came with me. I double bagged it. I put it in a guitar case, and then I put that guitar case inside the Fender bag this guitar came with, which was stolen from me, which I'm kind of still upset about. This came with a Fender soft bag, and I had that for ages, and I lent it to somebody, and they never returned it, and so it was stolen. So I'm not happy about that, because I'd love to have its original bag, but hey. But like I say, for a year, this went everywhere with me, and even when I was outside of college, it went everywhere with me. This guitar did, but yeah, I mean, it's been through all sorts of weather. This guitar has. It's been through snow, sleet, rain, you know, on the wind. You know, we've had some lots of adventures, but hanging guitars on the wall, I don't think you'll have many issues, to be honest with you. And let's say the only thing I'd recommend and be wary of is hanging on an outside wall, because the outside wall can be cold and it can make the guitar kind of, well, it can be cold or hot depending on where you are. Excuse me. Stop it. Depending on where you are, you just want to kind of keep it, you know, you can't keep temperatures level. You know, guitars are going to fluctuate. I mean, my guitars at this point in time, because we're kind of like heading into kind of like, you know, spring, summer, they're all over the place tuning wise, because, you know, the weather's constantly changing. So one day it's colder, one day it's hotter. So you go from a cold day to a hot day, you know, temperature's going to change, things are going to change on the guitar, the wood's going to shrink, it's going to expand, all sorts of stuff, different kind of moisture levels in the air, you know, humidity, they change, all sorts of stuff. But invariably, I don't think you'll find much of an issue, no. Hanging guitars on the wall isn't really an issue. And let's say, as long as it's not above a radiator, I mean, that is one of my kind of like no-nos, is outside walls and radiators. You know, I hate it when you kind of like see sometimes like there's like guitars for sale on somewhere or something like that. There's a picture of a guitar and it's leant against a radiator. I'm like, ah! It's just so, no, don't do that. Don't put your guitar against a radiator. You can if it's off, that's fine. If it's on, yeah, you know, if the radiator's off, that's cool. But if it's on, no, don't do it. Don't do it. So I mean, that would be my only thing really, you know. But saying that, if your house is, you know, warm and it doesn't, you know, if your outside walls aren't cold, you know, it'd be fine. You know, as long as it's hung off the wall. If it's touching the wall, you might have issues. But no, I mean, but in all fairness, I still would recommend hanging guitars on an inside wall, personally. But the thing is, it just goes down to kind of like, you know, these things are, you know, these things are tougher than people make out. You know, they're not weak things. You know, they're not weak instruments. You know, these guitars are not weak. You know, they can take quite a lot. So, just bear that in mind. You know, you don't have to kind of like, you know, you don't have to baby them so much. You know, they can take a beating. That's what they're made for. You know, that's why the truss rod's in the neck. You know, that's why certain, you know, it's wood. It's going to expand. It's going to shrink. It's going to do all sorts of weird things. You know, the plastics are going to crack. It's going to wear. You know, things are going to happen. You know, I don't think you should try and ever keep your guitars pristine unless certain reasons. I understand certain reasons, but like if you want to play it, then you have to accept the fact it's going to get a bit beaten up and a bit knocked about. You know, but again, just my opinion. I'm in a really weird frame of mind today, people. I do apologise. I don't know if it's coming across on camera actually, but I'm in a very, very I hate Dave mode today. So I do apologise if I seem a bit distracted by myself. I'm in a bit of a kind of like don't really like you today, Dave. And I don't really know. Well, I don't need a reason why. Sadly, unfortunately, it's just there. Anyway, let's not talk about that. But yeah, hanging guitars on the walls, I don't think you'll find an issue. Like I say, I mean, I do have kind of like two things. Like I say, inside walls and radiators are my no-nos. Other than that, jobs are good. You know, I don't think you'll find any issues. We had guitars hung on the walls in Old Hat for years. You know, there were some guitars in there, some old vintage guitars, hollow bodies, even like some 330s and stuff like that. We had them hung on the walls for about 4 or 5 years. You know, even before I worked there, when I used to go in there as a customer, I would see these guitars hung in the same places, and you know, you never really got any issues with them. And they're old instruments. You know, some of the. I remember we had some Epiphones from the 50s, and some old Gibsons and stuff from the 50s, and we never had any issues with them being hung on the wall or left in cases. You know, so I think it's just a case of just kind of, you know, go by your own experience, really. You know, and you know, don't worry about it too much. You know, don't get too bent out of shape about things just because it's, you know, there is a lot of kind of there's a lot of people on the internet that put kind of doubt into people's mind. There's a lot of, you know, in these forum kind of things, there's a lot of people who say things and it puts doubts to people's minds and makes you go, oh, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? And it can make you worry. And I think you just have to take everything from your perspective and your experience. If nothing bad has happened yet, then odds are you're kind of okay. Keep doing what you're doing. You know, as long as things are happy, you know, as long as you keep kind of maintenance up on your guitars and keep them, you know, so they're not, as long as you're not abusing them, you know, all should be well. But like I say, there are a lot of kind of like, you know, keyboard warriors who kind of like say, oh, I know this is a bad idea, and like then you read that and it kind of puts that into your mind of like, oh, is this a good idea? So invariably, like I say, and again, it comes back to what I've said earlier on. Just go by what you hear, feel, see, do, experience. You know, go by you. Don't go by what somebody else is, because their experience will be totally different to yours because of different things. You know, you can't compare situations to everybody else's. You know, your situation to everybody else's, and they can't compare theirs to yours. You know, it's all subjective. Everything's subjective. You know, somebody's house, they might have hung their guitar above a radiator and it went funny, and then they said, oh, don't hang your guitars on the wall, it warps the guitar. When it's not that, it was the radiator that did it. You know, I'm not saying that could be the case, but I'm just saying it could be a reason why. You know, and then all of a sudden that person is highly against hanging guitars on the wall, and they become adamant you shouldn't do it. You know, it's all down to experience. You know. So I won't worry about it personally. I mean, I've never had any issues with hanging guitars on the walls. Like I say, when we did it in Old Hat with the old vintage instruments, we never had any issues there either. Obviously, throughout the seasons, the tuning would fluctuate. We'd have to keep going. Invariably, in winter, the guitars would go The guitars would go flat, sorry. In winter, in Old Hat, when it was cold, the guitars would go flat. In the summer, they would go sharp. So we had to keep on top of tuning them down, especially when they went sharp, because some of them would go like a whole tone sharp. I remember going to some of the guitars sometimes and you'd find them in like F sharp instead of E. You know, it was mental, absolutely crazy. Invariably they were hollow bodies, but again, you just tune them down, you know, keep them happy, and you know, away they go, and they're okay. You know, I'll say these things are tough. You know, they're not, you know, they're not weak. You know, you don't have to baby them too much to, you know, for them to be okay. You know, I've seen some guitars that I've just seen so much abuse. That white Strat that was in France that me and Nicole fixed up, that we found at their rehearsal space. That guitar, man, was such a bad way when we found it, and it was so sad. I missed that guitar. I wish I could have bought that guitar with me, to be honest with you. But I say, the guy would not sell it. I offered him a ridiculous amount of money for that guitar. It was way more than it was worth, and he still wouldn't accept it. So, but my one bit of solace with that guitar is it's with Nicole and Marjo, and I know they'll look after it, and I know they'll love it. So hopefully, you know, they can keep it with them, so it doesn't go back and get abused again. But I mean, that guitar's seen some crazy weather, but it was still great. You know, the truss rod worked, everything went back fine, and it was, like I say, it was easily one of the best guitars I've ever played. Definitely one of the best Strats I've ever played, and sound as well. Oh my god, did it sound good. I miss that guitar now. Anyway, but again, subjective. Go by your experience. If you've had no trouble up to now, you'll be okay. You know, if your guitar's fine hung on the wall, guitars are invariably fine hung on the wall. You think about like guitar shops like Norman's Rare Guitars or Guitar Center, or any of these guitar shops that have guitars hung on the walls all year round. Andertons, you know, they've got guitars hung on the walls all year round. You know, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. Like I say, the only thing is be aware of cold walls, outside walls, and radiators. Radiators are guitar killers. You've got to be careful of a radiator. Radiator is a big no-no. Never put your guitars near or over a radiator. It's not going to be good for it. But again, just because it causes crazy temperature changes, you know, and it can just go crazy. Anyway, it can warp guitar necks. That's the main thing. It won't necessarily do anything bad to the guitar body, but it will definitely warp the neck. That's what will happen. Anyway, yeah. Nothing else I need to say on that one, is there? No. So anyway, people Tubo, but as I say, you chime in as well. Let us know let us know your experiences, feelings on hanging guitars, leaving guitars in cases. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. Okay. So yeah, people Tube, I'm going to head for the hills and leave you to it. So have a great morning, afternoon, good evening. Oh, if you want to submit a question for A&Q Wednesday, everybody, description box below has an email link. Email me there, and I'll get to it when I get to it. Like I say, if I don't answer your question more or not, I've answered it before, so it'll be in a previous Q&A. But yeah, but anyway, yeah, if you want to submit a question, do that. And like I say, I'll see you again on Friday for another vid. Have a great morning, afternoon, and good evening. And until then, goodbye now. Thank you very much indeed for watching. And I do apologise about my mood, everybody. It's one of those days today, sadly. And woo. See you later, everybody. Have a good one. Goodbye.